Thank you so much for tuning in to Assisted Laudable Living. I am your host, Jashina Shelton, and I am thankful that you tuned in today. We are on our third episode. Can you guys believe it? Third episode of Assisted Laudable Living. And this one's good too. This one is good. Look, I think you heard me when I asked the question. So the question for this week was, did you know that you may be responsible for your long suffering? What do you mean? I have a role to play in my long suffering. Trust, it hit all 10 of my toes too. All 10 of them. But it's okay because we're going to get through this together. Look, the Bible story that we're looking at today, Life Application Study Bible, comes out of John the 5th chapter. And John the 5th chapter tells us a story that some of us may be familiar with. Some of us maybe not. Either way, click. Let's listen up and see what the word has to say. John 5. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in that condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me in the pool. When the water is stirred, while I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you from carrying your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is this fellow? Who told you to pick up and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. That's it. That's it right there. All right. So in the text, because we can only talk about what we know, and we know what we read. And so what was laid out for us in this text was there was a man who was in a sick position, had been in the sick position for 38 years, found himself surrounded by other sick people for infinite amount of time, right? I don't know that he was there the full 38 years of his illness. It doesn't say that he was there the whole 38 years. It just says that he was dealing with his sickness for 38 years, right? So the place he's laid, where by the pool, is right outside the sheep gate. Why is that important? I am so glad you asked. So upon further research, the sheep gate is where the sheep would enter in, right? And so it is the easternmost gate for the city of Jerusalem. The sheep who entered in that gate were sacrificial sheep. Sheep without spot or blemish, who were about to die as a sacrifice for the sins of God's chosen people. So we've got this gate that the unblemished sheep pass through because they're going to be given as a sacrifice. Then right outside that gate, or on the other side of that gate, is a pool surrounded by 5 columns. And in those 5 columns is a crowd of sick people, other infirmed people, other lame people. So therefore, these are outcasts. These are people who were exhausted. These are people who society was like, we can't do nothing for you. We can't do nothing with you. So therefore, you go over here. We don't even want to deal with you. But they were at the sheep gate. Then one day, Jesus just happens to be going by. the sheep gate, which he will later on in John refer himself to. But that's it. I'm not going to jump ahead. In this text, Jesus is going by, and he goes inside the area where the people are, and he looks all around. And out of all the people who were there was a man. A man. Crowd of invalid people. There was a man. And Jesus spoke to that man. And he said, do you want to be well? Do you want to be made whole? That's King James Version. Do you want to get better? Let's go. Like, he didn't have a whole long conversation. He didn't answer what the doctor said. He didn't ask for the diagnosis. He didn't say, tell me your story. He didn't do any of that. He did none of the trauma-informed care stuff. What he did was he got straight to the point. Do you want to be made whole? Then the man came with what he came with. The man said, he gave Jesus excuses. That sounds familiar. But what he said was, look, other people keep jumping in front of me. Yes, I want to get into the pool like everybody else who wanted to be healed. I'm in the place for healing. I'm here at the right time. Unfortunately, I can't get close enough to the pool because the situation's out of my control. That wasn't what he had. That was not what Jesus asked him. If this was a trial, somebody would said objection. Because you can only answer the question that was asked if it was a trial. Not a trial, just a question. Do you want to be made whole? So here goes the excuse that the man gives. Now, it seems like a valid excuse, right? It seems like, okay, oh, that makes sense. Other people keep jumping ahead of you. However, sometimes you get to the place in an illness where it's like, oh, I've been down for too long. Something's got to give. And you've cried out and you've pleaded and you argued and you fussed. I don't think, I would like to think, that if I was in a condition for 38 years, that I would not have given up hope, that I would not have had excuses. However, I know me a little better than that. I do. I know me a little better than that. And I know that sometimes with certain conditions and ailments and certain things that we carry, if we carry it for a prolonged period of time, the excuses can come. Oh, my mama. Oh, I got church hurt. Oh, this person. Oh, that person. But the only question was asked, do you want to be made whole? We will encounter all sorts of people in our walk, right? In our life. Some of these people have gotten so used to their excuses that they have to think about, do I want to be made whole? Maybe I don't get that disability check if I get made whole. Maybe I don't have that prime parking space if I'm made whole. What story will I tell if I get healed? They just been in for so long, they don't see any way out. Now, mind you, he was in a place of healing. However, he was surrounded by sickness. However, everywhere he looked, somebody else got an ailment. And new people were coming all the time, right? And the only way people were getting out of there is if they got healed. And so for years, for months, his whole plan was, if I could just get to the pool, I can get my healing. If I could just get in the water, I can get my healing. So it's not enough to be in the right place. You also have to be in the right position. You have to be at the water when the angel touches the water. Not gonna dive into that. We're going to dive into the fact that a lot of us have played to our long suffering. Yeah. Well, it sounds good because we love a good comeback story. We love a good hero villain type thing. Oh. And we just keep it going. And we've kept it going for so long. When someone does ask you, do you want to be made whole? We're frustrated. Like, we're frustrated with the question because I'm a little sarcastic. So I'm like, why do you think I'm here? Why am I in a place of healing if I don't want to be made whole? Am I here for my health? Yes, I am. Right? But he didn't answer Jesus with sarcasm. He answered him with an excuse. explaining his situation. Sometimes the explanation does not matter. You have to read the room, as they say. You have to know who you're in the presence of. So yes, I want to be made. Yes, I want to be healed. Yes, I want to be made whole. But look, there are things and situations, and I don't have the opportunity, and this person and that person, and I've been in this cast, and I smell bad, and people don't want to touch me, and I'm unclean, and people don't visit me, and I can't visit my family. Excuses after excuses after excuses, right? Life situations, true story. However, in this situation, is this what you want? If this is what you want, take up your mat and walk. Now, obviously, this man's illness had limited his mobility. For him to immediately be able to take up his mat, the thing that he was laying on, to fold it up, and for his legs to get strengthened in that moment, for him to actually walk, miraculous. Again, it's another instant situation. Jesus appeared, Jesus said something, boom, instantly there was healing. Now, mind you, he's still in a room of sick people, but for him, he had a personal invitation because there was a question. There was a reason that Jesus sought him out amongst the crowd. We don't know. However, this story encourages us today, because if you're in the right place, if you're in the right position, if you're just close enough and you're frustrated, it's okay, because Jesus steps on the scene and you're seen. You are seen, not just as an invalid, not just as weak, not as dependent, but you are seen as someone who can be made whole, who can be healed, whose situation and excuses do not limit them, right? And so then he did that. He did exactly what Jesus said. He took the mat up. He got healed. His body was empowered from on high, and he stood up and he walked out. And he walks towards the temple. And what happens as he's walking towards the temple? He's going towards the temple. Jesus leaves. And the Pharisees are like, wait, what are you doing? It's the Sabbath day. The rules say, the law is, you can't do this. So no one is astounded by the fact that the man who had been sick and ailed and broken for 38 years, they're not astounded by that. They're concerned about the legality of the situation. Not the fact that he was healed, the legality of the situation. Sometimes in our efforts to do right and be right, we get it wrong. Sit with it. Sometimes in our efforts to do right and be right, we get it wrong. Now, yes, there's Jewish laws. Absolutely. Yes, there are ways that we're supposed to live, guidelines we're supposed to follow. However, when you're in the face of a miracle, you can't get so caught up on the legality of the situation that you forget the humanity of the situation. That humanity was just touched by divinity and something miraculous just happened. No one in the text is caught up on the miraculous. There's no praise party. There's no tambourine. We don't see that the man said thank you. We didn't see that he was grateful. We didn't see none of that. We saw he got up, he was obedient, he walked out, and as he is walking to the temple so that he can worship and praise and do the things that he has been denied access to, he is caught up by the legalistic side of things. Sometimes, some of us who profess to be the way put stumbling blocks in our own way. When people are healed, changed, transformed, on a different journey, we have to acknowledge that first. We can worry about legality later. Who did it? How'd you get healed? What are you doing carrying your mat? Does that matter? In this moment, we can worry about legality. We can have a meal and talk about all the little details later. In this moment, oh my goodness. My boy, is that you? You was just stretched out. You was still at the pool last time we saw you. Now you up and walking. Something you have not been able to do for 38 years. And no one is caught. Okay. Miracles don't just happen every day. Miracles didn't just happen every day. They're not in the text like every day, this is the miracle. Every day, this is a miracle. This is the miracle today. Right? Because then it would become normal and it wouldn't be as miraculous and it wouldn't be as great. And this man didn't even, he didn't climb up in a tree like Zacchaeus. He didn't press his way through the crowd. He was just in the right place. And Jesus was in the right place. And both of them being in the same place. And Jesus looked down at him and he looked up to Jesus. Because remember, he's infirmed. Right? So he is in a lower position. So if it was a hospital, he'd be in the hospital bed looking up. If it was just like a staircase, he is on the staircase trying to get to the pool. So his goal is forward or down. But all of a sudden he has to look up because someone is actually speaking to him directly, and within that exchange his healing comes. So then he has to wrap up his mat, and then he starts to make his way towards the temple. And as he's making his way, who stops him but the religious sect? How many times have those of us who are churched, maybe even church leaders, missed the mark? How come we have to hit them with the legality straight out the gate? In this church, we wear this. In this church, we do this. We pray towards the east. You're hitting them with the legality before you've embraced their humanity. And now you're setting up a discourse between them and the God that they're trying to serve. You are really doing them a disservice. Well, look, we've done it this way for 50, 60 years, and it's worked for our ancestors. How well is it working? How full is your church? Okay. How well is it working? Where are your grandchildren on Sunday? Where are your children's children? Where are your neighbors? Do people even know you're a Christian by the life that you're leading? Or are you so caught up on legality and the rules and the regulations, and it has to be this way, this way, this way, this way, that you don't even make room for the grace of God? Right? Because the grace of God covers a multitude of sins, including yours. So not just theirs, but including yours. Covers a multitude of sins. And when Jesus shows up, he said, I didn't come away to do away with the law. I came to fulfill the law. So while you're sitting here making sure everybody's checking all the boxes every cotton picking Sunday or Sabbath day, whatever day you worship, you're missing the mark. I know order is important. I know decency is important. I get all of that. But when you are meeting people where they are, that's where Jesus was. He didn't tell the man to come up out of the pool area. He didn't say that. What he said was something to the man inside the pool area. He went to him. He didn't call him out of his sickness. He went to where he was, spoke to him directly. But you too good. You too good to do that. You'd rather walk around in your religious clothing, put on your religious mask, and do your religious duties religiously, while people are dying right next door. Within a walking distance from where you are, people are dying. But because they didn't hit certain check marks, you're going to let them die? There are just some things. There are just some things that just need to be tightened up in our body, right? There are just some things that need to be tightened up with our religion. There are some things that need to be tightened up. And they can be tightened up through relationship. But you don't build relationship by hitting every single check mark. That's not it. Yeah. Jesus showed us great examples. And if we call ourselves Christian, if we say we're Christ-like, if we say we're part of the way, we have to get out of the way. Okay? And when we get out of the way, we allow Jesus to show up. Because later on it goes on to say those who worship him can only worship in spirit and in truth. He didn't say worship him in legality. Spirit and truth. And the truth was healing trumped legality. A living testimony trumped legality. Yeah. So when religions are spread down generations, people talk about relationship over legality. Yeah. I asked Alexa today. Oh, I said, Alexa, how many Christian denominations are there? This chick don't tell me. There are over 3,000 denominations of Christianity. Because everybody want to come with their boxes. And then, I'm not going to do this box, I'm going to do that box. And we're not going to do this box, we're going to do this box. We're not the Church of God of Christ, we're the Church of God in Christ. It's the little stuff that keeps tripping us up and dividing us. And we're not mighty when we're divided. We're mighty when we're together. If you fall under Jesus, if you say he is my Lord and Savior, we got to do better. We got to do better because there's so many people at the pool of Bethesda waiting for healing, waiting for some angel to come and trouble the water, and then feeling left out because they couldn't make it. And we have the answer. We know how to help them spiritually, emotionally, physically, maybe financially. We know how to help them. And a lot of us are still checking boxes. And we got to throw the boxes out because the boxes don't matter. At the end of the day, the big picture, do you want to be made whole? You want to be made whole? Cool. This is what you got to do. Give the people the truth. Give the people Jesus. It doesn't matter if they come to your church building, his church building, the church building around the corner. Give them Jesus. He'll lead them to the right place. Did you see what happened in this text? The man had an encounter with Jesus and went straightway to the temple. Leave him for God. Do what you're called to do. Stop tripping these folks up and let God be God. Big G, not little g. All right? Okay. So look, we're going to come back. Assisted Laudable Living. We're going to come back to this. We're going to break it down even further. We're going to dive deep. We're going to use that SOAP method. And if you want the study guide that goes with this week's lesson, you can definitely subscribe and like us on YouTube. And then, you know what? We'll email it over to you, PDF copy. And it'll be yours. And you can have it so you can dive deeper in this text and see what it means to you and for you. All right? Well, I, again, am Jashina Shelton. I'm your host of Assisted Laudable Living. I'm thankful that you joined me today. As always, take care, be blessed, rest in his word.